So now we're gonna end our session for today on July 8th on blog writing. You guys had just read those two blogs, one from a former MERETI participant from last summer, and the other one from, I believe, let me take a quick peek here, from, I think it was from an NPR side. Anyways, so you've read over those, and I'm curious to see if you find some of the tips and tricks that is in handout 13 actually represented in those. So let me walk over these blog writing guidelines that you have in handout 13. It's from a colleague of mine, the School of Pharmacy, gave a workshop to us some years ago on blog writing that I thought would be really handy. Some of them apply. Well, you will probably find more useful, some less useful, depending on what kind of blog writing activity you engage in. If you have your own blog, like your own website, your own URL, then all of these will be very useful. If you're only writing a blog here and there for somebody else's website or blog, then not all of these will be super useful to you. But first of all, I like to focus on being authentic, right? So you really can use I and you. You can actually almost talk to your audience in your blog, and you probably should. You want to engage them in a very different way than you would your scientific audience in an article and a grant proposal and so on. So a lot more freedom with that. You will still want to follow established writing styles, grammar, punctuation, and so on, especially following those three principles we just covered, right? Because they really are great for both scientific as well as science writing, which blogs are usually considered to be part of more than scientific writing. As you're writing your blog entries or your blogs, make sure you be concise. You should only be 500 to 1,500 words max, so nobody wants to read a 12-page blog post. You want to consider the audience, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand with being authentic. Think about your audience as a, in most cases, a very broad audience, but you can also sometimes have a very specific audience depending on the blog you're writing for. So keep that in mind. Make sure you focus a blog entry on one topic rather than trying to cram all the information into one blog post. So if you have a lot of information to share, think about maybe writing several blog posts and presenting it more piecemeal to your audience. Feel free to use analogies and anecdotes, little stories, personal narratives. Those are great, particularly when you're writing about your personal experience. So don't shy away from that. If you want, depending on the kind of focus you have in your blog post, make sure you include a call to action, and this can range from, asking people to buy something you're making. Sometimes blog posts do that, right? They're writing about something and they're really promoting a product. Now in your case, that will probably not happen a lot, but maybe you want them to join an organization or to look at another website or to, to do some service in an area that you're really passionate about, participate in a study. So, call to action at the end of a blog post can be very effective because you usually have your reader's attention. You hold it pretty well. Still, make sure you incorporate references appropriately, even though you're not writing in a traditional scientific genre. You still need to document clearly where things are coming from. And this one here, optimize content for search engines, particularly useful and relevant when you're doing your own blog, but also thinking about if somebody is searching for this blog, what kind of keywords would you want to be in there. So you want to have, eye-catching headings, and I'll show you an example from a blog that I used to write, my own blog, which has been kind of laying very quietly there the past 1.5 years, ever since I got pregnant with a baby, but I'll show you some of the posts that I've done in the past and how I use headings and so on in that way. Make sure you organize content logically, right? So don't jump back and forth. You still have to have a sort of a red thread throughout your narrative. And then last but not least, write with passion. This is a time you can really reach people in a different way than studying your scientific work. So make that work for you. So you've looked at this blog by Hager, which I really liked. And she's just really writing generally about her experience at the MERETI summer training. So her title is pretty straightforward. It doesn't have to be fancy or super play with words. It can just be, hey, this is what this is about. My experience in STECM during the MERETI summer training. Perfect. I'm like, oh, gee, I'm curious what her experience was, right, at the summer training, because I'm about to go apply for this program. So it's actually good advertisement. And so in her first paragraph, just 3 paragraphs, they're great, they're not too long, they're not too short. she starts off with, I always heard that Egypt has many beautiful places, but I only managed to go to a few of them, mainly because of my busy schedule. Fortunately, that changed when I attended this in the guest house. And so she opens up with like, hey, this is, what I thought about, this is what happened. And I love this particular phrase. When I first entered Second, I was astonished, mainly because on my way I was surrounded with deserts, some scattered trees and buildings, a typical image we see in lots of places in Cairo. And suddenly that image changed and green was everywhere. So I love this phrase, and it's a fairly long sentence, but it works well because she really takes you as a reader on her journey of what she's experiencing. So she draws you in, she's writing with passion, she's making it clear to you. And then the second paragraph, that logical condition, she actually writes about what Sekem is, namely this eco-village and what's happening there. And if you notice, she uses you can see, some more animals. So she really engages you as a reader. She uses as I think. So she draws you in. She draws you in by writing about herself in a personal way, as well as addressing you directly with the you. And then the last paragraph sort of sums up what her experience has been there and some personal little anecdotes. And I love this, even now as I'm writing this blog, I can just relax in my chair and doze off in my thoughts as I look throughout the glass shield of my bedroom door leading into the garden surrounding the guest house. And again, she does the same thing. At night, you can sit on, drawing you in with the personal pronouns as well as the description. So it's a really beautiful blog, fairly simple, very straightforward, 3 paragraphs, an introduction, some more information, and sort of wrapping up with some more personal experience about what this person experienced at this particular place. And and it's like at the end you're like, wow, this sounds really interesting. Maybe I want to participate because I'd like to experience that as well. Okay. Now the other blog, this is really difficult to read, so I'm glad you have this in front of you. So the other blog is a much more what's the term I'm looking for? Much more formal blog on an organization, a broader focus on academic lab safety. And so this one is structured more like a traditional, piece of writing from research. But if you look at, the first paragraph, the same thing, gives a sort of introduction. The title says a broader focus on academic lab safety. So it just gives us an overview of this task force that the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities has formed, a task force on laboratory safety. And then some more information, some quotations, a link to the announcement. And then there is a paragraph here why this is important. So, and then I love this structure. First, second, third, and so on. So this is a little bit more formal than the blog that you've looked at before, Hager's blog, right? And it's because it's addressing a different audience, has a different function. But the language is still pretty straightforward. So there are a lot of direct quotations. There are, like, for example, in this paragraph here, so the death of a lab assistant, so they have the name of the lab assistant and they include the nickname in quotation marks. You wouldn't find this in a formal research article. You probably wouldn't find these people's names anywhere. So, in there would just be more neutral, just a description of who they were in terms of their functions. So in ways, this is also more personal, even though it is different than the previous blog. But again, it's a clear structure, first, second, third, and then some more information about the task force, and then just more information about, hey, what's going to happen next. Okay, so it's just sort of an informational blog about what's happening about academic lab safety as part of this task force of the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. Okay, so an informational piece that is kept fairly short, it's still well structured. And I like that they sort of highlight a particular quote in here that really sort of captures the most important image. If the task force succeeds in significantly improving safety culture and practice in its members' labs, the impact would be vast, right? That's really like, wow, this is what would be great. And I love also the picture of somebody in some sort of hazmat suit, right? It catches your attention. That's the one thing that wasn't included in the earlier in the guidelines. If you can use images, that's great. If you look at Hager's, she has an image of herself, which it's a nice image. So you can get she's already very personal in her writing, and the picture only adds to that. And here the picture enhances the meaning, namely it's about lab safety. just to give you an example. So I'm going to show you now a blog that I used to write. Oops, sorry about that. It was too quick. Let me see if it still accesses it. There it is. That's my blog. God, I forgot I wrote about this. So this is gosh, it's in 2017. It's 2 years ago. I was never a great swimmer, and as an adult in my early 40s, I finally took some swim lessons to master the front crawl because I hated to be underwater for a long time until I discovered earplugs. Anyway, it's a long story. If you ever want to read this, you're more than welcome to browse around. There's not that much on there yet because I started this and I never got it really going because you know, I just work and then pregnancy and child later on took over. But eventually I'll get back to this. But you'll see here, if you look at, I have a picture there, so it's about swimming, so I have a picture of somebody swimming. And I have certain sentences here highlighted. Let me see if I can highlight this for you with a pencil. No, I don't think I can. But you see things here. I will no longer keep my head above water. Not at all. Wait a minute. You might wonder why you're telling me you can't swim. So I'm putting things in bold as to really break up some of my sections. My paragraphs are really short. They're things that I have in caps, which you would never do in a formal article. As you can see right here in the middle, OMG, I'm drowning. I also have a lot of you in here, so I'm really trying to engage you as my reader. I have a link to another article, and you know, and so on it goes, it continues. And sometimes I have paragraphs that are only like a sentence long, right? So I'm really trying to break this up for my reader, not to have a lot of text. It's actually fairly long. I don't know if I really followed the time, the word limit here, so I would have to go back and see that, but I think it's all right. But I try to break it up by really having things in bold, by having short rhetorical phrases. How could I argue with that? To break up the sort of monotony of lots of information. Just to show you an example. And I have some other blogs here in my small archives. So feel free to look around at these if you're looking for some inspiration. But there's tons of other blogs there. Now Henry will have some suggestions for you as well. All right. So so one thing I want you to do is to actually one thing I want you to do is to actually write your own blog post. So that's an activity I want you to do for over the next few days and post it on MERETI. And if you want to send it to me or Henry beforehand, you guys can figure out how you want to handle it. I'll be happy to look at your drafts for your blog post as well. So if you want to email them to me, do so. But it would be great to have at least one blog post of each of you on the MERETI blog for next year's cohort and for other folks who are interested. It's really great to read that. And people stay in touch to the website, so don't think, and nobody's going to read this. People will read your blogs, and it's really wonderful to see that. And you can write about something related to your research, but maybe I would want to challenge you to write about something that's not related to your research, something else that you know that you're experiencing, something you've learned during this training session. Something that you found remarkable, maybe the place you're staying at, I don't know, something that might be of interest to a larger audience. All right, and I will speak with you for videos later on this week in our last session.